Hello and welcome back to Reflect Forward. I'm your host, Kerry Siggins. I hope you're having a great start to the year. Although it's still a bit chaotic, there's all kinds of interesting world events happening around us. And it's also not easy to come back after taking a little bit of a break, decompressing, and then having to jump right back into the craziness of leading a company in the midst of COVID. So I hope that it is exceptional and that you're managing the craziness as well. I am really happy to have spent some time skiing in fresh powder, but we have such unusual weather here that we've also had days that are warm enough to be able to run outside with a short sleeve shirt on. So we certainly are living in unusual times. Okay, let's talk about my guest today. I'm very excited to have him on the show. His name is Gabor George Burt. He is the global authority on creative transformation and future shaping strategy. Another strategist. I love strategists. He's the founder of the Slingshot framework, which is an expansion of Blue Ocean strategy. He's one of the core original experts of Blue Ocean strategy, which is one of the most profound strategic management books out there. If you haven't read it, you need to. It is still as relevant today as it was when it first came out many years ago. He launched the Slingshot framework because he believes that we all need to engage in more creative thinking as business leaders to systematically reimagine market boundaries to fill needs that our customers have. He also talks a lot about how we need to become absolutely invaluable to our customers. I'll wait till we get into the interview to discuss the exact word he uses to describe it because it's such a good part of the interview. And I love his thoughts on this, especially because an IBM survey of 1,500 CEOs worldwide found that creativity is considered to be the single most important leadership trait for future success. And this whole podcast, of course, is about being successful. So I know that you all are very interested to be able to hear different ways that you can be more creative for yourself, for your careers, and for your companies. Gabor has shared the stage with many big names like Seth Godin and Sir Richard Branson. And he was one of the 3 judges for the European Innovation Venture Award. And he sits on the board of the Global Innovation Institute. He works with executives of multinational companies. He's a subject matter expert. He works with government agencies and NGOs and startups, applying his Slingshot framework to reimagine the market boundaries and create out growth strategies. He is so much fun. We have such a wonderful conversation. I hope you enjoy this interview. I certainly did. Hang tight and I'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. I'm so excited to have my guest today, Gabor George Burt. This is going to be an awesome interview, and we're going to jump right into it. So welcome. I'm so glad you're here, Gabor.
Thank you, Kerry. It's great to be with you. I look forward to our conversation.
Excellent, excellent. All right, so why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Who are you and what do you do?
Well, I was born very young. In fact, for a brief moment, I was the youngest person on Earth, and that's an interesting place to start, right? And if you think about it, that's still true for everybody, right? But it's not something that most people realize. And I actually mention that often when I give talks because one of the key themes that I talk about is our inner childhood, right? In terms of how playful, curious, and adventurous we were, and that is still within every one of us today. But most of us don't ever think about that. So, in terms of my background, I think very briefly, what's relevant to mention is that I was one of the core original members and experts behind the concept of Blue Ocean strategy, which is a whole new way of understanding corporate innovation strategy. And based on that work, I founded my own framework called Slingshot. And Slingshot is, in one sense, the practical guide to creating blue oceans. And on its own, it's about reimagining boundaries. So, in one word, I would describe what I do as an imaginationist. So, I help individuals and organizations reimagine boundaries and to harness the power of creative transformation.
I love this. I was familiar with Blue Ocean Strategy, oh gosh, probably before I started to work for Stone Age. So
Mhm,
15, 20 years ago, I think must have been when I first came across the book. And I believe so much in the process that we at Stone Age have gone through
mhm,
a blue ocean strategy exercise and workshop, and it led us to changing in a pretty significant way. And so when I
mhm.
came across your slingshot methodology and participating in the masterclass, I was so excited because it was such an eye-opening workshop
Mhm.
to really rethink your business in a way that you've never thought possible. So I'm so excited to dive into this with you.
Absolutely, that's another connection point between the two of us. When I heard
Yeah.
that you did that, yeah, it immediately makes me think that you understand all these key concepts, you know, that I bring to companies and to leadership teams. It is it's extremely exciting, and especially now in the wake of COVID, when the normal or the status quo as we knew it no longer exists. Everything is to be reimagined. Understanding how to do that is critical.
Yeah. So, one of the interesting parts of your story that I'd like to dive into before we get into the interview is that you immigrated from Hungary when you were 12 years old. And
Hmm.
I'd like to understand how that experience felt for you. What was
Hmm.
that like? And how did that shape who you are today and how you approach this idea of reimagining boundaries?
Sure, no, you're right, and that was a major part of who I am today. And it's interesting that you used the word immigrated because you know I didn't have much choice. I was still just 12 years old, so I was really just brought along. But yes, my mother remarried and brought me with her to America. And at that time, Hungary was still a communist country. So growing up in the capital city, speaking Hungarian, learning Russian and French, not speaking a word of English, and then being brought over to the East Coast and dropped off in a small university town called Durham, New Hampshire, was an extreme change. And yeah, I think it did have a profound impact on me because as such an outsider, you immediately start questioning, right? So you start noticing the differences. You start to see cultural manifestations, and all those things opened up all kinds of things in me, whether it was a curiosity about travel, an interest in understanding why things work the way they do, and why people think the way they do. So that led me to major in psychology in college. It also made me very self-sufficient and self-reliant, as you can imagine, trying to fit into a new environment at age 12. And then the second part of that story is that I finished business school in 1989 when the Iron Curtain came down. So I actually went back to Budapest at that time and participated in by establishing and running my own software company in what I think is one of the most fascinating time and place in human history, right? During that decade, the 90s, the entire region of Central and Eastern Europe transformed socially, culturally, economically, and politically, and mostly peacefully. And to have been able to not just witness that, but be an active participant in that was again just really profoundly impactful on what I do and how I think.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I can only imagine coming from a communist, upbringing, even though young in age and not necessarily fully understanding the impact, coming to a democracy like America, and then being able
Mhm.
to participate in creating democracy through through starting a business and hiring employees and adding value. I can only imagine how exhilarating and also probably a little bit scary that was.
And you're right, and that's so good that you picked up on that because if you weren't there at the time, all you would hear are the positives, right? That finally communism is over, democracy has come to Eastern Europe, and that's glossing over the reality, right? The fact is that that part of the world did not have a history of democracy, so they've never experienced that. Before communism, it was it was a monarchy. So that had to be started from the ground up, and there were some serious challenges and difficulties. So you're right. I mean, uh, having lived through that, experienced that, and being part of that was really meaningful. And of course, it shapes what I do today, and this whole notion of reimagining boundaries, because that's what we were doing, right? Everything we were doing at that time during that decade in Eastern Europe was complete change, and it was a complete transformation of everything that was there before.
Yeah, I think that's a great point because we do tend to gloss over the difficulties, especially the American values when we talk about, oh, democracy is this fantastic thing that we want to spread across the world. But when you have to experience going through, it's kind of like the wormhole, right? From one entirely different way of looking at the world to
Mhm.
another way, that is painful. It's like metamorphosis, right? It's rebirth, so to speak.
Yeah,
So I can
yeah,
imagine that it's easy. It's easy, I think, for people to think like, oh, that's a great thing. It was a liberation of so many different countries and so many people throughout Europe. But it was definitely not easy. Going through that kind of change is
yeah.
very, very difficult.
And let me give you one example of that. So,
Yeah.
uh, Hungarians, or you could more generally Central Europeans, are very creative by nature, right? So, if you look back at whether it's science, art, literature, the number of famous innovators or personalities through history is really well concentrated in that part of the world. Uh, and when the Iron Curtain fell and I established my company, I had some young employees, and I thought that this background, this cultural advantage of creativity, would be some of the things that they would bring with them. But it was really the opposite. So that creativity was really kind of educated out of them in the former system, and they all they were doing is looking for instruction, and they were afraid to do anything on their own. And so that sort of re-engagement of creative thinking had to be reacquired and relearned. So exactly. So it was really a kind of even on a personal or a psychological level, just kind of a great experiment.
So how did you do that, right? So all of a sudden you become aware, like, oh wow, I'm going to have to teach this. Did you have
Yeah.
any idea of how to even get started? What did you do?
Well, and this is an interesting connection to our conversation because at the time, when the first articles came out about blue ocean strategy, and that time it was still just called value innovation, in the late 1990s, one of the first articles appeared in Harvard Business Review. And at the time, I was still running my company in Budapest, and I wrote an article uh, in response to Professor Kim's article and Professor Mawborn's article that was published in HBR precisely on this to say this is all great, but my experience here in Hungary is that the young generation is not really able to engage creative thinking, and some of the things that I am doing to encourage and nurture that include just more of a hands-on approach, right? So to kind of liberate and to encourage them to let go of this rigid thinking that they need instruction, right? So when we do that, when we break that down and give them smaller tasks or assignments and say, now you run with this, and then we review it together, then step by step that could be reprogrammed, and that's exactly what I did.
Oh, oh, what a great story. Thanks for sharing that.
Sure, of
All right,
course.
let's jump into talking about strategy. I love
Mhm.
strategy, and I have had to figure out how to be good at it. I've made the mistake that so many people make in thinking that an operational plan is a strategy, and it's not. So, being that it's so crucial, why do so many of us get it wrong?
Well, because there's a fundamental change in our environment. So I like to reference two things. One is an article that appeared in Fortune magazine in 2006. And the year is important because just 6 years before, in the year 2000, Fortune magazine named Jack Welch as the manager of the century, basically saying that what he stood for in terms of his management principles and practices are the ideal way to run companies. 6 years later, an article appears called The New Rules, put out by Fortune, saying, sorry, Jack, you got to move over. Everything that you did was perfect for the last century, but this is an entirely different environment. And it actually listed a couple of those old rules and the replacement rules. And one of those is be number one or number two in everything you do. And the new rule is no, create something new, right? One of the other ones is uh, big dogs own the street. No, being big can bite you. Flexible is more important than size, right? So there's a fundamental shift going on. And then a few years later, IBM did a study of a global study of, I think, 1,200 CEOs from across 60 industries asking, what do you think is the number one quality you need to have for successful leadership into the future? And the number one answer was creativity, right? And at the same time, all these leaders said it's the quality that we're not very good at. We know we need to get better at it, but we don't know how to embrace it for ourselves and how to nurture it for our organization. And that is the reason, and the answer to your question is that the whole idea of strategy and future shaping understanding of how to run businesses has fundamentally changed because we live in a world that is characterized by uncertainty, continuous motion, continuous change. And managing in that is very different than maintaining the status quo and just keep building on the foundation like companies like Jack Welch's General Electric did last century. So
Yep. Yeah. I love that word creativity. And people have asked me, what do I think is the key trait for being to be successful? And of course, there's the hard work and the vision and the plan. But the number one thing I say is curiosity,
mm,
because it's difficult you can't be creative if you're not curious. If you are not exploring the world around you and trying to understand why things are the way they are and why does it work this way and what if we did it this way. And so I think that curiosity and creativity goes hand in hand. So I always tried to lead with curiosity because I believe that sparks an incredible amount of creativity. And I
yeah,
would not have, I would agree with you. I wouldn't have said GE back in those days was necessarily a curious company. They were a money generating machine, and creativity and disruption can be dangerous
mhm.
when you're in that situation.
Exactly. I also love the word curiosity, and the symbol of my whole platform is Slingshot, and to me, Slingshot is the perfect connection and reminder of our childhood sense of adventure, curiosity, uh, and uh, and creativity. So to me, it's all very closely related, and a special kudos to you that you think like this when you're in a currently a B2B business, an industrial business, and to realize that you also have the ability, in fact, the mandate as the leader of that company to explore and to go beyond is excellent. And as I said, uh, that's a foreign concept to most business leaders who have been in that position for over 10 years, not just in B2B industries, but in B2C industries as well.
Well, I think it's such a relevant topic because you're right. So many people are afraid to be curious and to push their companies into new spaces that might, I don't know, disrupt, revolutionize. Because when you're looking at short term performance as the
Mhm.
key measure, then it's really hard to say, "Ooh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to take this risk for the long term payoff." And so we've been conditioned. I think leaders have been conditioned to not take
Yep.
risks because we are measured on short term performance. And luckily, Stone Age is an employee owned company with two founders who are by nature disruptively creative and curious. And so I feel really fortunate that I came in at a young age to a company like that where I could really express my curiosity
Mhm.
and creativity and not have the pressures of short term performance that would really hurt our overall, long term creativity and positioning in the
Mhm.
marketplace.
I think that is great. That's a really special and healthy environment. I also think, and I'm curious what you think of this, that this is actually to me, the natural state. So what's great about curiosity, creativity, um, and continuously asking questions is that to me, that's our natural state, right? So that to me is when you really liberate people working for you and with you to really engage their personalities, their own talents, and to fully contribute rather than a very structured environment and just following orders. And again, just going full circle to in our conversation, that was really one of the key downfalls of communism too, right? Which was not which was a not a demand economy, but really a supply economy. Everyone was told how much to produce, and that's how much you produced, or try to at least, and there was no wiggle room for creativity, innovation, or curiosity.
Yeah, and I think that those traits, to focus on the do as I say, the orders, it tramples the human spirit because
Sure.
all of us have a desire to feel part of something. We all have a desire to create value and to be valued and to be heard and seen.
Mhm.
And curiosity and teaching people to question can be drawn out as simple as asking, well, what do you think? And we just don't do that so often, whether it's we don't care or we don't think we have time or
Yes.
we think we're right or we just don't know.
Mhm.
And if we just stopped and asked each other that simple question, well, what do you think, a little
Yeah.
more often, we would probably, I don't know, draw curiosity and creativity out of people so much more.
Absolutely, and that's really also the way that I work with my partner companies, clients, and organizations. Is that I'm not a consultant, so I wouldn't come in and tell you what to do. What I do is I liberate the thinking of your team beyond what they thought they were possible. They were possible of considering. So one of the things I do is I have a 6 question test, and I do a wager to say, and you may remember if I did this in our master class, uh, to say that I bet no one will get more than 2 out of the 6 questions right because you have these self-imposed mental boundaries of what you think is possible for your business and for your market and for your customers. And invariably, I win that bet. And they're very simple questions like, what business are you in? What do you think should be the goal of innovation? Who do you think are your most relevant competitors? And that is the start of the journey. That's mind opening, right? So when you say that in terms of enabling people to ask questions, to be curious, they just need that impulse. They just need that spark, and that's what I bring. And then I share with them a methodology to now systematically being able to explore and follow your curiosity.
Yeah, I like this. And I like it in your book that you talk about how even the most successful businesses have these self imposed boundaries
Mhm.
and that they hold them back and they might not even know it. So, can you
Yeah.
describe a little bit more of what that means and how you walk your clients through solving this problem?
Absolutely. So, I mean, one example of that is, and I mentioned this as one of the questions, is what business are you in? So the uh, the response of most people is to describe what they do, right, and to reference something that they sell, something that they make, or a service that they provide. But that in itself is leaving a huge market space completely unexplored, which is what is beyond that product, that service, that market space. So what I push them to do in that particular instance is to define their business, their value to their target audience as widely as possible, right? So one of my favorite quotes that I reference is by a former Army psychologist who said that the human equation is to multiply joy and divide pain. Joy shared is joy multiplied. Pain shared is pain divided. It's a really nice statement, but the reason that it's so relevant is because I push every organization I work with to think of themselves as being in the business of multiplying joy and dividing pain for their target audience, right? And that's such a powerful mission statement, right? You're no longer constrained by a particular product, a particular service, a particular industry or market space. What you are talking about is a relationship with your target audience, and being so close to those people that you are understanding what they feel pained by, and you celebrate joys and things that you do for them that make them excited, that bring them delight, and that's the difference, right? So that's an example of how this works, and why it's such a powerful, liberating way of thinking.
Yeah, I love it. This is exactly what we came up with this mindset with the Stone Age assurance process.
Hmm.
I'm sorry, promise. And it was all of this idea, and we didn't use the word joy, bring our customers joy, but I love that because I think that that's so important. But it was all
Hmm.
around this, like, how do we make sure that we don't leave them anything to worry about? They know when they work with Stone Age that we've got their back,
Hmm.
and it has really just infiltrated our company, and our
Hmm.
customers like
Hmm.
understand it. It's this whole
Yeah.
idea that it's the promise that we make, and we are going to
Yeah.
do everything we can so that you don't have to worry about this portion of your job.
Yeah.
And we really looked at it through that framework as to,
Yeah.
you know, how do you really solve your customer's toughest problem and make their lives a little less stressful than they did before they used your product or
Absolutely.
service.
And what you just said, it sounds so obvious, right? It sounds so simple. I mean, isn't that the purpose of every business, right? But what's amazing is that 95% of businesses get it wrong, right?
Yep.
They just don't focus on what they should be focused on, whether it's because their sights are on their competition, whether it's on technology, whether it's a misguided understanding of customers. So those that get it, have a huge advantage, which is why companies that I work with, on average, increase their growth trajectory by 300%. So it's really powerful. And one of the other ways I kind of stimulate this sort of thinking is simply to ask, if you were to if you were to go to your customers and ask, who is my favorite corporate partner, right? Or brand, if it's a B2C business, would you be in their top five? Okay. And if the answer is no, then why not? I mean, isn't that aren't those your most relevant competitors who are keeping you away from being considered as one of the most important relationships in your customer's mind? And if you are one of the top five, are you number one? Right? So can you be that one brand, that one company that your customers associate with positive feelings, with the feelings of joy and delight? And if you are number one, what else can you do for them, right? Because now you have their
Yep.
attention, you have their emotional connection. There's no limit to what you can do to expand that relationship. And that's where it gets really, really exciting. Once you go down this path, there's really almost no limits.
Oh, I love this. This so resonates with me. Our mission statement, which we had a lot of debate around, and I finally prevailed. And I don't usually like to prevail, but I so believe that this is the right one. Is our mission is to make our customers say, "Why would I choose anyone but Stone Age?"
Mhm.
And it goes against so many of the obvious, the typical mission statements that are out there. But I was like,
Mhm.
that's why we show up every single day. This is like a rallying cry to all of us. It makes it really easy for every employee in the company to go, am I is what I'm
Yeah,
doing, would that make a customer say, oh yeah, why would I choose anybody but Stone Age?
right.
And it's we just put it out there. I was like, we're going to put it
Yeah.
out there front and center, and it's going to be what we all focus on with all of our effort and all of our service and all of our joy.
Mhm.
And now our customers know that. Our customers on social media is like, yeah, this is why I say I wouldn't choose anybody but Stone Age. And
Yeah.
even having that kind of clarity around it for the entire company and
Yeah.
putting it out there for our customers, I think made a huge change in the
Yeah.
way that we viewed customer service
Well,
and our strategy.
that's perfect. So I'm going to have to use your example as a case study. We're going to write it up because that is excellent, and that is exactly what I'm talking about, and what you should be doing, and companies should be doing, and to put it in an even more extreme or perhaps ambitious context. There is a word that has been created, and it's an official ailment that you can go to a psychiatrist to be treated for, and that word is nomophobia, which means the fear or anxiety of being without your cell phone. Okay, so here's the challenge. Uh, what would it take for your customers who, as you described, are already feeling a close attachment to you? What would it take for them to create a word to express their fear or anxiety of ever being without Stone Age, right? So there it is. It's
I
another
love
way of
it. I'm
the same challenge. So what would that take, and what would that word be, right? So they could actually go to a psychiatrist and have a session to be treated for it, to be calmed down because it's just causing them too much stress. Um,
I love it. I'm so going to do that exercise tonight. Oh, that's great. That's great. All right, so let's talk a little bit about customer pain points. In your book, you talk about identifying customer pain points and turning them into points of infatuation. And I love the word infatuation, and I'm
mhm.
super curious as to why you picked that word. So, can you describe what that means and how should leaders go about doing this?
Yeah, so infatuation is a very special word because a lot of people talk about joy and delight and amazing and wowing customers, and those are all great. But what makes the word infatuation stand out is that it means two things simultaneously. One is that it's a strong emotional reaction, but the other is a time element, that it's temporary, that it's fleeting. And that is key because whenever you do something for your customers that they love, that they react to and say thank you, very shortly after, that will become the new normal. That will become the new status quo. So after that moment, each time they will be less and less excited by it. And after a while, they'll expect it. And then from then on, they will want to be excited by something new again. And so infatuation captures this cyclicality between you and your target audience. And therefore, I actually coined the phrase infatuation interval, which captures this state of infatuation that from that moment, that first moment starts to decrease. And after that, it transitions to what I call the entitlement period, in which there's no longer an emotional charge because everybody sees it as the normal. And in fact, that's the time when customers become critical. And so, what you want to do, your mandate is to keep your customers in a continuous cycle of infatuation intervals, right? So now you understand both the timing and the content of how you should be innovating. So that's the idea. And a quick example of this transition from a point of or a pain point to a point of infatuation, or a fun example, is the square watermelon, which is a real thing. There is such thing as a square watermelon, although it seems strange, and it's in existence in Japan. And the story of that is that Japan is a relatively small island with a lot of people, so space is scarce, and watermelon is a very tasty, well liked fruit, but the biggest problem with it is its awkward shape, right? Which does not make it very easily storable, either in the supermarkets or in people's homes. So a while ago, a group of farmers in Japan said, "What if we make them square?" Most everyone immediately rejected. That's a stupid idea, can't be done, etc. They went ahead anyways and discovered it was as simple as just planting a watermelon seed in soil inside a cardboard box, and it would just grow up, taking on the shape of that square box. They brought it on the market. It was really well received. It's a premium product, so people pay extra to have a square watermelon. So how does this represent the concept? Well, the biggest drawback, the reason that people didn't buy a watermelon was its shape prior to the square watermelon. Now it is the reason that they buy it because they're paying a premium for the ones that are square shaped. So that's an illustration of how you focus in on what everybody else missed. In this case, hey, we can actually do something about the shape of the watermelon and make that the key selling point. So that's the idea.
I love it. And what a great description of why you picked the word infatuation. I definitely wanted to know that, and I could not agree with you more. Right? It's always that constant cycle and race to keep yourself relevant. And I
Right.
like that. I like the term of the infatuation cycle because
Yeah.
we always are going to have to figure out how do we keep our current customers and attract new customers, and it's never going to be by just doing the same old thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the
Yeah.
beauty of that is that when you're emotionally connected, your customers will be that much more forgivable, that much more kind to you. So you may actually screw up. You may be late on an order or miss something, but that will not interrupt your relationship because it's on an emotional basis.
So let's talk a little bit about innovation. Do
Mhm.
you think the most powerful innovations are entirely new ideas or combinations of existing products and services? And why do you think that?
Yeah, so my vote is in the second camp. So of course, entirely new ideas are possible, but absolutely not necessary. And that's the big point that I make is that really powerful innovations are possible simply by unlocking new combinations of already existing components, which is a what I even call the innovation shortcut, because it allows you to be less risky, to use less resources, to be much quicker, right? Because you're not inventing, you're not the first to do something, but you're the first to combine things that haven't been combined before. And when you look back in the history of business, this is basically the formula for many of the most important innovations. Whether it was the Model T, Henry Ford, before the Model T, the automobile in terms of its design and functionality already existed. Ransom Olds already started using assembly line for in the automotive industry. So what Henry Ford did is very successfully take all those pieces and combine with an easily replicable, very affordable design, and that was the genesis of the Model T. Uh, in today's world, an easy example is Starbucks. You know, Starbucks is, I think, by now a $30 billion company. Did they invent anything? No, they combined a coffee culture or cafe culture that has been around for centuries with an easily replicable fast food model, and that's Starbucks. Apple, Steve Jobs didn't invent technology, but harnessed technology and combined it with beautiful design, artistic and easy to use customer interface. So that's the idea, is that in whatever business you are in, those shortcuts, those combination interfaces are available to you. And if you take advantage of that, and it's a very powerful way of innovating.
And I like that because it makes it slightly less intimidating. Because I think that it can be overwhelming to think, oh, I have to innovate, or as a company, we have to innovate. and so many innovation initiatives fail.
Mhm.
And do you think that's just because people think of innovation solely as new ideas, or complete disruption
Yeah.
rather than making tweaks and combining what you already have?
Yeah, and so that's one of my 6 questions. What do you think should be the goal of
Yeah.
innovations? Precisely because it's something that most people get wrong, right? And again, the answer is deceptively simple. But the reason they get it wrong is because they think of innovation as having to do with new technology, or they look at the ways to perform something better, to be more efficient in production. So it's an internal focus rather than external. Or they're looking at their competition. How can we do something better than they're doing? So they just have the wrong focus. And once you have that, then everything is off. So a really uh, kind of eye-opening example of that is iridium. So iridium, I don't know if you remember or you know the story, but they were started by Motorola in 1998 as the first satellite-based mobile telecommunication network. So instead of tower-based, satellite-based, meaning that the idea was that because uh, because the satellites would orbit the Earth, you would be in continuous contact. So you didn't need to rely on towers in terms of receptivity. Great concept. They said we're going to be the first, but the only thing they missed is it was completely unpractical. So their devices were huge, very expensive, and most of all, they didn't work inside. So you had to go outside to be in direct line of communication. So Motorola invested, I think, $6 billion into this, blinded by we're going to be the first rather than will this be embraced by customers. And within a year, the whole thing was shut down, and they sold it to the military for $30 million. So $6 billion investment sold for 30 million because they got the innovation basics wrong.
I think that's an excellent example. Is it innovative if nobody wants to use it or nobody wants to buy it, right? I mean, there's certainly the notion that there's value in pursuing an idea for idea's sake and what you learn from that process. But
Sure.
is it really innovative if it's not useful? I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, you can have other reason to innovate. You could be an artist and do things, or an academic. And but if you're talking about business and you're the leader of a organization, a company, and your mandate is to maximize the value of that, then you can't afford to miss like that. Then
Yeah.
you can't be doing things like this. So yeah, that's it. Obviously, yeah, you can. There's many other reasons why you'd want to innovate, but if we're talking business and business success, then you need to absolutely focus on what your customers will appreciate.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you brought this up just for my own personal growth and stretching of my mind, because I am so business focused and I do have a very hands-on tactical product that it's hard
Mhm.
not to think of innovation outside of that. But I'm very much of a believer that our lives are improved so much. We have such a higher quality of life because of thinking and reading and art and music, and we can stifle those things in the pursuit of usefulness, practicalness, let's make money with this. And it really isn't a holistic life if you're not enjoying all of those aspects. And it does take innovative people
Mhm.
pushing boundaries in all aspects of creativity to bring that kind of joy to people. And so I want to explore that idea of innovation in academia and innovation in art,
Yeah,
and not just stay so focused on how my company is innovating.
that's great, and that's absolutely something that excites me as well. So when we're talking about reimagining boundaries, I am just as involved in doing that for the government sector, for academia, and on a personal level, I have all kinds of interests that I pursue, and I think that's the core of all that is the central notion of reimagining boundaries, because that's not limited to business. In fact, the subtitle of my book is Reimagine Your Business, Reimagine Your Life, right? Because it's just a way of how you look at yourself and your surrounding and your relationships, your target audience. as you define it. It doesn't just have to be your business target audience, but anyone that you're in a relationship with. And how do you continuously make that fresh, and how do you continue to push those boundaries? So yeah.
Yeah. And you think about some of the systematic failures that we have in society, and it's around things that are institutionalized where there's not necessarily a lot of innovation happening. So, you're looking at like how COVID is going to be disrupting education, the education system. It's
Yeah.
going to be different, and it needed to change a long time ago because it isn't equitable, and it shouldn't cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars to get a high quality education. And so, how are all of those systems going to be break down, and how are we going to innovate in new ways? It's not necessarily about a product. It's really about saying the way that this has been institutionalized is not
Yeah.
working,
Yeah.
and we're going to be forced to do something different.
Absolutely. That's why it's kind of an exciting time, if we can look at it
Yeah.
that way, because it's forcing all these issues to the surface. So we can't ignore them anymore, right?
Yeah. Well, I think it comes down to, if it seems so hard, right? And inertia gets us stuck. And so when you kind of can compare it to the transition from communism to democracy, right? There had to be something that was really bad that was happening. It really wasn't working, that it is
Yeah.
forcing you to say, this is going to be more painful to stay on this track than it is to go through the change of getting on this new one. And COVID has done that for so many things, and realizing like the pain of status quo
Mhm.
is not going
Right.
to, it's going to be easier to change, it's going to be more fruitful to change, even though
Right.
it's painful, than it is staying the course.
Yeah, no, that is.
Yeah.
It's an absolute catalyst, and that's true just
Yeah.
with companies. So it's much easier to think about reimagining and transformation if you know you have to, right? That you have no
Yeah.
choice, than when you're doing well, when you can ignore it. So that's absolutely the case. So that is true, and that's why, to me, this is a special moment, because I want to help as many people and organizations as possible to embrace this as an opportunity rather than as a crisis.
Yep, I agree with you. All right, so as we wrap things up with this interview, I have two more questions for you.
Okay.
So, the name of my podcast is Reflect Forward, which has a lot of meanings to me, but I'm
Mhm.
curious, what does Reflect Forward mean to you?
Yeah, I really like that word. And again, I think it's like a combination of two things that people wouldn't naturally put together, right? So it's the innovation shortcut. And that combination, for me, reflecting means that, number one, you have your senses open, right? So you're looking, thinking, wondering, asking questions in the form of curiosity. But it's also, reflecting means that you're thinking about the present, or maybe even the past, right? And then forward is about the future. So to me, that's a great kind of connection to my whole brand, Slingshot, because the mechanics of a slingshot is that you pull back, right? You're creating tension against this elastic, which to me is about your current mental boundaries right now. And when you do that, you can launch the projectile forward. So by doing that, you're now embracing all kinds of new possibilities for the future. So I like Reflect Forward because of those two things, that it's about thinking and exploring boundaries, but also the interplay of those two words remind me of the mechanics of a slingshot.
Yeah, good. I love it. That's a brilliant answer. I love it. I love it. I love it. All right. And finally, what's the best piece of advice that you can give to leaders who want to be exceptional at what they do?
All right, so I'm going to do that by referencing a quote, and that's from the world of sports. And I often do that because sports is a great kind of parallel to life and to business. And it's a quote that was said a while ago by Wayne Gretzky, who was the greatest hockey player of all time. And in his sport, he was so much better than anybody else that he, in his career, had 3,000 points, meaning goals that he scores, or assists that he gave. And the next best had 2,000 points, which was his teammate, so benefited from playing with Wayne. Um, and so he was once asked, "What makes you so great? That you are so much better than anybody else in a sport that everybody is fairly close in terms of talent?" He said, "It's simple. I don't skate to where the puck is. I skate to where the puck is going to be, right? So what he said is simple. It's my vision. It's my focus. I don't go to where the action is today. I don't look at what is happening today. I try to project where the action will be in the future in a couple of seconds, and I will be the first one there. I'm going to already be moving there and positioning myself there. So I think that's a really good piece of advice for any business leader, is to always have your sights on not just the present, in the sense, reflect forward, but what is on the horizon, what is next, what is beyond, and how can I take advantage of that? How can I lead my company to be the first in that space? And especially right now, because of COVID, it's the optimal time to think like that. What is beyond COVID? What will lifestyles and work styles be like? And how can I bring my company to bring something special that really will bring solutions to what people will be looking for in that new environment?
Yeah. Brilliant. Great answer. Excellent. All right. So, how can people find you?
Well, the best way to find me is my website. So that's just my name, GaborGeorgeBurt.com. On LinkedIn as well. I'm very accessible, and connect me with that. And the other thing that I'll offer is that if you want a copy, meaning the listeners or the watchers of our conversation want a copy of my book Slingshot, which by the way is only privately available. If you want an e-copy, just reach out to me on LinkedIn, and we'll send you a copy. So
Yeah.
that's probably the best place to reach to find me.
Fantastic. Well, Gabor, thank you so much for this fascinating conversation. I completely enjoyed myself. I don't want to stop, but I know we both have things to do. So thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really, really
Gary,
appreciate
thank you
it.
for having me. Obviously, it takes two to have a great conversation, and you're a wonderful partner in this. And I'm so impressed by everything you shared and that you're doing with your company, because again, it just perfectly represents everything that I think is important and I talk about. So this was a great lesson and conversation for me as well.
I know we're kindred souls. I really do feel that way. Like everything you say, I'm like, yes. When we need to get that message out there. So I
Absolutely.
look forward to continuing to work with you in the future. So thank you so
Absolutely.
much.
Thank you, Kerry.
All
Okay.
right. Yep. All right, everybody. I'll be right back. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed that episode with Gabor. I had fun interviewing him, talking about creativity and curiosity and philosophizing. Okay, on to my question for this episode. This came from a LinkedIn follower who said, I understand to be highly successful, you have to be mentally tough, but I don't know how to go about strengthening my mental toughness. Smiley face. What is your advice? So I love this question, and developing mental toughness is something that I think we all need to do more of. And it reminds me of watching The Last Dance, which is the documentary on Michael Jordan's career. I love this. I am a super fan of this documentary. And one of the things that really, I don't know, that I really liked the most about it was the story of Jordan's mental toughness. Many athletes had the talent to compete with him, but what set him apart was his mindset. He would not accept failure. He would not settle for anything less than pushing through all obstacles. So this documentary made me reflect on my own leadership attributes, particularly my mental toughness. And I asked myself a lot of questions around, do I have the ability to overcome all obstacles? Can I push past failures? Can I face down adversity with positivity and confidence? What is the strength and resiliency of my own mind? So I started to ponder, how do I develop this mental toughness and become an exceptional leader so that I can overcome the setbacks and the mistakes and the burnout and the stress that I feel on any given day. I know that to be mentally tough, I have to banish self-negative talk and push aside doubt, but those are very real emotions. So I on a journey to figure out, how do I do this? So I started with positive mindset. First and foremost, you have to have a positive mindset. This does not mean that you need to convince yourself that life is always filled with rainbows and unicorns or ignore negative feelings. But you must believe that no matter what life throws at you, there's always a silver lining and that you will always be okay. That you will actually come out stronger because of the challenge, not despite it. And having a positive mindset also means that you see the best in others and you believe in positive outcomes. If you are saying, oh, this will never work, I'll never succeed, this person is holding me back, that is not going to help you develop mental toughness. All right, second, you have to believe in yourself. I love this quote from an American surgeon. I believe he was a plastic surgeon, but it's still really good. So Maxwell Maltz said, low self-esteem is like driving through life with the handbrake on. I couldn't agree more. You cannot have low self-esteem and be mentally tough, at least not the kind of mental toughness that we're talking about here. Mentally tough people believe in themselves and they are self-confident. They don't think that they might succeed. They know that they will succeed. Sure, we all have moments of self-doubt, there's no doubt. But when you do, take action and push through it. You will gain confidence by doing hard things over and over and over again. Third, do not be a victim. You can never blame others for what life throws at you. Instead, you must take full responsibility for everything that happens in your life. And I mean everything. Sure, I know that things happen that are outside of your control, but you can still take responsibility by asking yourself, how did I get into this situation? How am I in a position that I got hurt or let down or I made a mistake? That's how you can start to look to take responsibility. And this is really important because victims are always trying to deflect or blame somebody else or push that responsibility to others, and that is very disempowering. So instead, when you say, hey, I'm responsible for my life, even the stuff that's out of my control, you are self-empowering. So step into this responsibility and take charge of your life. You will build your confidence and you will overcome those limiting self-beliefs when you refuse to be a victim of your circumstance. Fourth, challenge yourself. I know it's cliche to say you've got to get out of your comfort zone, but you do. Relentless pursuit of greatness is not a linear path. There will always be ups and downs, and the more obstacles you overcome and the failures that you face up to, the more resiliency you will build and the more confident you will become when you're outside of your comfort zone. And to me, this is the best definition of mental toughness, being comfortable, being outside your comfort zone. It's okay to feel scared and nervous. You just have to harness that fear and challenge yourself to push through because that's where the good stuff happens. And finally, you've got to do the work. Stop making excuses and get to work. The only way to get good at doing hard things is by doing hard things. The only way to develop mental toughness is to do hard work and develop your mental toughness. Stick with it. Push through difficult situations. Be willing to do more than the next person. Look, developing mental toughness is not about eradicating your weaknesses. And I know a lot of people think that I cannot be weak, and that is further than the truth. We all have weaknesses and we all have emotions that hold us back, like fear and intimidation. But that doesn't mean that it stops us from doing things. So don't eradicate your weaknesses and don't be cold-hearted toward yourself or others. The negative self-talk isn't going to get you to where you want to be. You want to instead develop self-awareness and dedicate and cultivate an I can do anything mindset. It's about persevering in the face of adversity. You need to take on every challenge that life throws at you with curiosity. Why is this happening? Resolve. I will get through this. And self-compassion. Even if it doesn't go that well, I'm still worthy. I'm still a good person. I still love myself. It's about taking risks and building your confidence. The more you practice being mentally tough, the tougher you will get. Okay, so that's my answer to the question. So just to recap, have a positive mindset, believe in yourself, never be a victim, challenge yourself, and do the work. In closing, I will leave you with my favorite Michael Jordan quote. He said, "If you are trying to achieve, there will always be roadblocks. I've had them. Everybody has had them. But obstacles don't have to stop you. If you run into a wall, don't turn around and give up. Figure out how to climb it, go through it, or work around it." I hope that was useful to you and inspiring. Thanks for the great questions. Please send them over to me. I'm happy to answer them on the show. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I will see you at the next episode of Reflect Forward.